Hello, this is Andrine, a Jewish American priestess, bringing you a reading today just in the early parts of this month of Cheshvan, the month of mourning and rain and moving into the darkness. And as we do that, as we move into this time of year, it's important to pay attention to nature and how it is transforming in the world in order to keep ourselves grounded. And so I just took a little walk and I brought in some natural materials from outside my home. And I'm going to do a reading for each of these three sets of things, and you get to choose which one appeals to you. I'll hold each of them up so you can see. The first is a set of 3 leaves. We have a dogwood leaf, a beech tree, and a vine maple, all having shifted their colors for the season and fallen to the ground. That's pile number 1. For the second, I chose these fruiting bodies of I have a white mushroom that came up as a twin of mushrooms, as well as this tiny bracket fungus. It's quite beautiful. It's got this little orange pink edge, and underneath you can see that it's getting ready to release its spores. So the mushroom fungus is pile number 2. And then for the third, I've chosen a piece of cedar. Cedar, which is a tree that has much healing power. It's western red cedar here. And it remains green throughout the season. And has, again, quite lovely healing properties medicinally, as well as just being beautiful fragrance. And on top of that, we have a rosehip from the bald hip rose, I believe, native rose to the Pacific Northwest. So we have the cedar and rosehip, which is fruiting right now and remaining evergreen in terms of the cedar. So that's for pile number 3. So take a moment to discern. It looks like we have a little droplet of water here too. It is raining right now. The rain has started here. So we have the rain blessing us as well right in the center at the bottom. So take a moment to discern which of these 3 sets of autumnal plants and or fungus seems to be calling to you today. And I'll put the timestamps down below. And then we'll do a reading with some Hebrunes, some Nordic runes, and a card as well. I look forward to seeing you in your reading. Hello, pile number 1, those of you who chose the fall leaves today. Like I said, we have a dogwood leaf with dogwood trees right outside my window, and the leaves, I don't know if the camera does it justice, they are so red and bright right now and quite gorgeous in the rain as they fall to the ground. And I love that they got a little bit of yellow in them as well. And then we have the beech tree, and this one I didn't intend to pick up, but it followed me in on my shoes, and so I honored that. The beech tree, which is out front of my home, it makes a beautiful brown leaf in a similar shape. And then the vine maple, which transitions from green to yellow to red, and this one was on the ground and it's a yellow, transitioning in the autumn as they fall to the ground, bursting into this gorgeous color before they compost into the earth and become earth themselves, to transform, to provide more soil and nourishment for the growth of the next season. So starting out, that's the first message for you, is that these apparent deaths in the leaves as they flame out into color are meant to provide nourishment for growth. So whatever you've got going on right now that seems to be burning out or transitioning is meant as compost for the next thing. I'm going to set the leaves up here on the corner, and we're going to start out by taking a tarot card, and I decided I was going to do different decks for each of the readings. For this reading, we're going to take the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, and this is the deck that was gifted to me in Italy this year. So let me give them a shuffle and see what's your main energy for your reading right now, coming up for this transition that you are about to head into. See if one comes out or if we just choose one after we shuffle a bit. Oh, that one is already flipped over. I'm going to flip it again and keep going. But interestingly, the moon is up. I guess that shouldn't be a surprise. The moon is, we're just in the new moon of Cheshvan, and we're heading into a full moon at the end of this month next week in All Hallows Eve time, All Saints and All Souls Day. So the moon is always up in these things, the mystery of the moon and the shift and the transition that the moon goes through as well, as we travel through our lunar cycle. I'm going to go with this one. Okay, let's turn that over and see what we have. This is the Four of Pentacles. So in the Four of Pentacles, you see a person seated. They look like they're wearing a crown and a cloak as well. And they've got a pentacle at the top of their head, one with their arms wrapped around it in the stance of the safety dance, and one under each foot. And you can see in the background a large towered city. It looks like many cities in Italy. And the Four of Pentacles, the pentacles are about earth. They're about earthly things. Sometimes they're about money, but they're about conserving resources. Interesting that that comes up right now, because there is this conservation of energy that goes on in the compost cycle, where we leave the leaves on the ground right now. We don't sweep them away. We keep them and we let them do their work right now. And so there's something here about holding on to what is valuable, not being stingy necessarily or greedy, but just conserving what you have. Because the four, it's not like you have 10 pentacles and you're keeping them all. You're just holding on to what you have in order to let it transform into something else. So that's our basic position here, is this Four of Pentacles, conservation of resources. And let's take out some Hebrunes. We're going to do 3 Hebrunes on the left and 3 Nordic runes on the right. Let's mix them up and see what is transitioning right now for you this season. At the top, we have the letter Nun. In the center, we have the letter Tet. And at the bottom, we have the letter Lamed. Nice. Okay, let's pull out the Nordic runes as well right now. At the top, we have the letter Fehu. In the center, we have the letter Ingwaz. And at the bottom, we have the letter Perthro. Nice. So starting at the top on the left side, we have the letter Nun. And the letter Nun is the letter that corresponds with this month of Cheshvan. It is the letter that is about humility. It's like somebody who's kneeling and bowing. It Sometimes I said it looked like a scorpion with its tail up in the air because we are the Scorpio season right now. So there's something both about humility and protection that's here. It is the letter that is the number 50 in Gematria. And 50 is, it's interesting, it's the letter that corresponds to the Jubilee year, the Yovel, which is the year in which all are freed, all the slaves are freed, and all the land is returned to the original owner. And not just the land being returned to the original human owner, but all the land being returned to the original divine owner. That's up a lot right now with regards to land and conservation of resources, trying to preserve what is there. It's about, freedom and about returning of possessions to their original owners. Again, the land belongs to the divine. It's the beginning of the word ne'eman, which means humble, and it's the beginning of the word nes, which means miracle. So it's about faithfulness and believing in the ability for a miracle to occur through humility. And it is also the foundation of locomotion, so slow progress forward. Slow progress forward is up right now. It can have to do with abundance. In the Aramaic, the nun means fish or abundance. And in the Zohar, the nun is affiliated with deceit, being able to discern what is truth and what is deceit. Like I said, it is the month of Cheshvan and the constellation of Scorpio, and it corresponds to the stomach in the body. So feeling something in your gut, perhaps. That gut feeling of knowing what is true, not being deceived, trusting your gut. It also corresponds to the tribe of Manasseh. Manasseh, who was the first son of Joseph, but also lost the birthright when the blessing was given by Jacob. He gave it to Ephraim rather than Manasseh. And yet Manasseh still has a place. Even though his birthright was given to Ephraim, Manasseh is still really important. And there are people who claim to be the tribe of Manasseh in northeastern India, I found out this month. So that's really interesting that there's an entire lost tribe in northeastern India that are sometimes now returning to the Holy Land. So a lot of things about being lost and found, having one's position taken away, being humbled, and yet still having a place. Recognizing the miracle of a situation. And I see this as corresponding to the Hermit card in Tarot, which is about being humble and setting time aside for humility in order to find your way. And maybe even leading the way with your humility. That's really up right now. There's something about the falling from the tree that is also important with regards to humility. When one has fallen, how do you transform into something that is useful? How do we take the falls and the hits that we've been given and transform them into miracles? On the right side, in the Nordic rune side, we have the letter Fehu, which is the first in the Futhark. And it's about wealth and cattle. So conservation of resources for sure. This is about the wealth that you tend, whatever kind of flocks you might have, or maybe agricultural fields that you tend. Where's the worth right now? What is success and what is worth? What gives you wealth in your life? Is it stuff, or is it something less tangible? It's about abundance and increased income and possessions and such financial gain, but it's also about happiness. It's about what do we tend in our life? What is the important thing that we are focusing our resources on right now that will provide us great wealth in the future, either emotionally, spiritually, or physically. So humility seems to be one of those things that we could tend better in order to have more resources in the future. If we can tend to the immaterial, I think long term it will give us more resources. So even when things are falling from the trees and dying, how can we tend value? How can we see the beauty in it? How can we see the beauty in things as they transform, rather than just focusing on holding on to things as they are? On the left side, in the center, that's our position of what is a challenge or a fear right now. And we have the letter Tet. Tet is seen as a vessel, a cup. It is the first letter of the word Tov, which means good. And it's also seen as a womb, a basket, something containing goodness within it, some sort of gestation. It is the number 9 in Gematria, so it can have to do with that 9 months of gestation in the human body, pregnancy, some kind of something good is gestating right now, or the fear is that maybe something isn't good gestating. It's a concern right now. There's a challenge right now about gestating what is good. As we're holding on to our wealth, as we're cradling this coin right here, do we know that it's good? Tet also has this connotation of renewal. It's the number 9. That's the number of shofar blasts that happen at Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, where we just came through the high holidays. And it's that idea of renewal that comes with those blasts of the shofar to wake us up. It's also said to look like a coiled up snake. And to that end, the snake sheds its skin and it transforms. But sometimes it's hard to see the goodness within. It also corresponds to the month of Av. And the month of Av is sometimes seen as a month of mourning. And here we are in the month of Cheshvan, which is also a month of the mourning woman, because we have Tisha B'Av in the month of Av, which is a great day of mourning of the destruction and exile. So there's something concept of mourning here, but the death that happens with that mourning leads to a birth, because we have this womb here, this gestation, this renewal, this ability to spiral in and out. And I see Tet as corresponding to the Empress, so it has this idea of this maternal creativity and nurturing, the fecundity of the soil. As leaves fall and transform into soil, it makes them more nurturing. It makes them more able to nurture new life as it comes up. So the challenge here is to see the transformation as something good, to know that there's goodness within the transformation, even though it's challenging, that even though there may be something that is looking dark, or maybe a snake, or some kind of mourning that we're doing in whatever way we are mourning that right now, that there will be renewal and gestation and goodness that will come out of this. It also corresponds to the sense of taste, which is finding something good, something delicious in the difficulties, in the transformation right now. And on the right side, we have the Nordic rune of Ingwaz. And Ingwaz is a seed, so not dissimilar, that we've got a seed that's been planted. It comes from the Nordic god Ing, who is the fertility god, earth god. And so it's about gestation again, gestation, internal growth, and new life. So the challenge here is finding that growth, finding new life, finding even amongst the falling leaves, finding life, knowing that a seed has been planted. And the thing about seeds that we need to remember is they are placed under the ground. They're planted in the darkness, and they don't know what's going to happen, whether they're going to grow or not. And we have the knowledge that when we do that planting, that fertile earth that has been fertilized by the leaves that have died, the compost that has come before, that something good will come out of it, that seed will sprout and then new life will come. But right now, when we're in this seed time, it's very challenging to know. Right now, the seed only knows that it's in darkness, that it's under the earth, that somebody put it under the ground. And so we need to trust in the miracle. We need to trust that that which we have planted in our wealth will grow in the future as the seasons transform. And then for our outcome or advice, on the left side we have the letter Lamed. And the letter Lamed is the letter that begins the word Lev, meaning heart mind. That transformation of our heart and our minds. It's the only letter that reaches above the line in Hebrew, and so it's about aspiration as well and hope. It looks a little bit like a seed that's been planted underground and is now reaching up toward the sky. So that growth that's happening, that reaching up for the divine, reaching up for the heavens. It is the foundation of action. And it's also the first letter of the word for teaching and learning, limud v'lamed. So learning what we need to learn, and then turning around and teaching it to others. Finding a way to take action, maybe to plant the seeds or to nourish the seeds. With our hearts and our minds really transforming ourselves as we lie under the earth for a period of time in gestation. How can we learn to nourish and nurture these seeds so that they can grow up, so that our minds and hearts can reach up with hope towards something better? It's about digesting. It's the letter that corresponds to the intestines in the body. So it's about taking in food, information, spiritual information, nourishment, extracting what we need to extract from it in order to give our bodies the nourishment that they need, and letting go of that which does not serve us. It is the tribe of Ephraim that was elevated. He was the one who was elevated above his brother Manasseh. So Ephraim was the second son of Joseph, and when Jacob went to bless the grandchildren, he switched his hands so that Ephraim would be elevated. So in the same way that Manasseh and Nun is humbled, Lamed and Ephraim is elevated above. So it's about being elevated up toward something greater. Even though you were brought in second, you still have the potential for being elevated above and receiving that blessing. I see Lamed as corresponding to the star card in tarot. The star card, which is all about hope and aspiration and optimism. That our hearts and our minds, our heart minds and our guts, both our stomach and our intestines, give us information as well, that we have to feed them in order to discern appropriately what to do next. But listen to your heart mind. Aspire, reach up for connection with divinity. Allow a seed that you planted while you were kneeling on your knees to gestate within that tet and grow up toward the sky with love, with Lamed. On the Nordic runes side, our outcome is Perthro. Perthro, which is a cup or a vessel. You can see it looks even a little bit like the tet there. It's a cup or a vessel. And it's used as a game piece in Nordic runes. It's what was used to do gambling. So it's about the lot box, not knowing how things are going to turn out, but taking a chance. It's about change. It's about hidden information, things that we didn't know, secrets and truths that were there all along, but we didn't know them, and now they're being revealed. So on this side, as we've calculated our worth and planted a seed, we suddenly get to know it may be a surprise, but maybe it will be a delightful surprise when we discover what's true, what's been under wraps, what has been covert up until this time is now being disclosed. It's a positive outcome, and that we'll find the truths. We'll know what the secrets are. We'll be able to discern what the right thing to do is, because we'll have all the information we need now that that secret has been revealed. So for those of you who chose these leaves, as they fall to the ground in their glory and are transformed, take some time to think about what is valuable to you. How are you conserving your resources without being greedy, without being stingy? How are you holding on to what is important that isn't necessarily physical? It can be spiritual, it could be emotional, relational. How can we maintain our humility right now? And even though there's concern about the gestation, concern about what is being transformed, concern about whether there will be goodness within or renewal, or whether that seed will actually grow, it looks like the outcome is yes, there will be growth, heart-mind growth, the ability to discern, and secrets that will be revealed to give you all the information you need to hold on to what you need to hold on to, and share what is appropriate to share. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll look forward to seeing you here next time. Hello, pile number 2, which is to say mushrooms. So let's take a look at your mushrooms today first and see what they look like. Well, let's look at this one first. This was a bracket fungus. It was growing on a log like this. So it's got this dark brown and this subtle orangish pink edge, and then underneath you can see all the gills of the spores, which are not lateral, they're not exactly in line, they're kind of meandering, and I love that about these. So that's one of the mushrooms here. And then the other, these two twins that came up out of the ground, I was trying to pick one and they both came. And they're not quite, the spores part is not quite open yet. You can see there's still earth on them, growing in the leaves near the logs in the native grove. And these fruiting bodies of the mushroom are just the part that sends spores out into the world. The actual mycelium is underneath the ground, and it connects to mycelium all over the grove. So these two, even though they were hundreds of feet apart, may actually be speaking to each other the way that mycelium connect like neurons underneath the earth. And they may be speaking to each other. I don't know, because I don't speak their language, but what's wonderful about them is that network, that underground network that communicates all the way through the entire ecosystem. It communicates to the trees and to the other grasses and plants and the shrubs and to other mycelium to talk about the health of the area. And so when we have a lot of fungus coming up at this time of year in the grove, it helps me to know that the grove is healthy, and that these mycelium and these fungus are working to break down the tissue of that which has served its purpose, and it's transforming it into something else. Mushrooms are, and various other funguses are sometimes used to clean up massive sites of spillage, for instance, like oil spills and such. They can actually transform toxic material into something else. So that's what you've chosen today with your mushrooms, and I think that's amazing. I think it's a beautiful metaphor for what maybe is coming up for you right now. I'm going to set these off to the side here, and the way I'm going to do this today is, maybe I'll set them like this so I can see them very well. The way I'm going to do this today is I'm going to pick, I'm going to use actually different decks in each of the readings today, and for you, I'm going to choose the Wildwood Tarot. And we're going to start by choosing one card to help center your reading, and then we're going to do Hebrunes and Nordic runes as well. So let's pull out one card for you from the Wildwood Tarot to help us find our central focus about how things are transforming this season in your life and for you as things change. As things change this season, they change from one state to another as they are transformed by external forces and nature as a whole. And this is the card that we have today. And we have the journey. Wow. So, 13th card. That's traditionally the death card. And it is representative of a journey as one thing transforms and changes into something else. In this particular card, we have the number 13. We have the skull with the antlers on it, and a crow, or it looks like a raven actually, with that curved beak sitting atop. There's also a leaf. Oh no, it's not a leaf. It's actually part of the animal that the crow is taking, or the raven is taking, to transform itself from one living matter into another. There is the full moon above and two more birds, probably ravens as well. It's a really great card for this time of year, with the full moon coming up soon around All Hallows Eve. So this is your central card, this idea of death, this idea of transformation and journeying from one thing to another. The doorway, the gateway into the next realm, is represented by the journey. So let's take some Hebrunes as well. We're going to do 3. We're going to do the present circumstance, the challenge, and advice or outcome. So at the top we have the olive. In the center, we have the Dalet. And at the bottom, we have the Mem. Nice. I'm going to go ahead and pull out the Nordic runes as well, so we can look at the whole picture here. At the top, we have Gabo. In the center, we have Nauthiz. And at the bottom, we have Thurisaz. Yes, Thurisaz. Make sure that's, yeah. Great. Very nice reading. Okay, let's take a look. So starting on the left with the Aleph, at the very top, Aleph is the number 1. It's the very first letter of the alphabet. And to that, it represents the beginning. It represents a new thing. Something new is coming, transforming. The Aleph is the mother letter of air. So it has to do with breath. Changing as we breathe, bringing in breath into our body and transforming it into something else so that it can come out to nourish the trees, the same way the trees take in carbon dioxide and exhale oxygen for us to survive on this planet. Aleph has that concept within it, this idea of transformation through air, breath, wind. It represents the chest in the body. and the balancing of above and below. We have the yud in the upper right corner and the yud in the lower left corner, and the vav separating and connecting both of those. So as above, so below, divinity and humanity, and this idea of connection and division. Liminality, also crossroads. A crossroads where things come together, but not exactly, and we have to make a decision about which direction to go. It also corresponds to cattle and worth. In the ancient Paleo Hebrew, it looked like a cow's head. So it has this idea of inherent worth and the worth of that one tends in their life. So something that you are tending is up right now. And it could be just as simple as your own breath. It is that liminal space between summer and winter, the spring and the autumn, where we are just entering in right now, this fall time. And it is the first letter of most of the divine names in Torah: Adonai, El Elyon, Elohim. And it's also the first letter of Adam, Adamah, mud, earth, and human. So it has all of that within it, the idea of divinity and humanity, the idea of that space between what is divine and what is human, what is air and what is earth, what is heaven and what is below. So it has all of those things, and that's what's up right now, this idea of transformation through air, this liminal space between one season and the next, maybe one world and the next, as we're seeing in the journey card. The path, right, that crossroads where we get to and have to make a decision about what direction to turn. And the same way as mycelium has these myriad roads and threads that go underneath the earth, so too Aleph has that concept of multiple directions to choose from, and tapping into the divine and one's breath, sitting perhaps in meditation, can be a useful tool in trying to discover which direction to go. So that's what's up for you right now with regards to the current time. And then interestingly, on the right side, with the Nordic runes, we have Gebo, which also looks a little bit like the Aleph in that it's a crossroads. It is about a gift or an exchange, a connection with another, some kind of agreement that one might make, maybe a contract with someone. The gift is always an exchange. When something is given, something is received as well. So there's some giving and receiving happening here. The challenge on the left side, we have the letter Dalet. And Dalet is a doorway. It's a gateway. It's also the first letter of the word Dal, which means a poor person, a poor one. So there's something about humility here. But Dalet in specific, for me, corresponds to the death card in tarot, because it is about transitions. It's about going through a doorway. It's about coming out the other side and finding out what's there. It's about, again, a liminality, that liminal space about when we're standing on the threshold of a new thing, how do we transition? How do we take that journey to the next place? It's the number 4 in Gematria, so it has to do with the 4 seasons, the 4 elements, the 4 letters of the divine name. It's a letter that corresponds to the planet Mars in the sky, Moadim, which is the planet that is frequently seen as the war planet. So a challenge here with what's going on with regards to hostility and aggression, and just making that difficult transition through a doorway. How do we make that transition? Is there a fear around death? Is there a fear around the transition between one thing and another, between the summer and the winter? Is there a fear around the aggression that's taking place in your life? Is there a fear around poverty, since this has to do with a poor person? And can we tap into the 4 directions, the 4 elements, in order to find support as we walk through the door? Dalit is also the binary transformation of wisdom and foolishness. So how do we travel through that doorway wisely, not maybe rushing ahead or making a foolish decision on the road that we're on, the journey, the pathway, the crossroads? When we get there, how do we know what's the right direction to go? That's the challenge and the fear right now with this letter. And on the right side, we have the Nordic rune of Nauthiz, and you can see that it looks a little bit like Gebo, and it's got one leg that's longer than the other, and I have a challenge figuring out which is upright and which is upside down. So I'll tell you about both. Nauthiz is about tending your needs. It is about taking care of what is necessary to take care of personally, making sure that your own needs are taken care of before rushing off necessarily to take care of another. Nauthiz is about necessity. It's about need. So it looks like this. And when it's reversed, it can be about immediate needs, emergencies. Drop everything and tend your needs. It can be about constraint and caution and delays and conflict. Similar to the Dalit and the Mars connection, conflict and the will to overcome something. So tending one's needs, taking care of whatever conflict is up, and if necessary, dropping everything you have to tend your emergent needs if there's an emergency going on right now. That's the challenge and the fear right here. Is there an emergency? What do I know what my needs are right now? Can I even discern them? As I'm about to head on this journey, what are the needs that are up right now? Can I discern what they are and take care of the basic needs? That's the fear and challenge on the Nordic rune side, Nauthiz. And on the Hebrew side, for the outcome, we've got the letter Mem. And the letter Mem is the letter that's affiliated with this season. It's the mother letter of water. So it has to do with the winter and the wet season. We just started the wet season here, where I am. The rains are coming down. And it's all about transformation and cleansing. And because it's about water, and it is a mother letter, it is like a womb. It's about transition through gestation, taking time to really pay attention to what is up, what is being gestated right now. With these fruiting bodies of the mushrooms, we have spores that are inside there. The mushroom, which exists under the ground most of the time in the form of mycelium, is now sending up spores to be distributed into the world. And it's the wetness, it's the moisture that calls that forth from the ground. This nurturing wet season that helps things to transform. It's the first letter of the term Mayim Haim, which means waters of life. And it corresponds to the belly in the body, the womb, and the amniotic fluid within that womb that's like the sea from which we all come historically. It's the number 40 in Gematria, so it corresponds to the 40 weeks of gestation in the human body, but also like the 40 years in the wilderness, that transition and gestation time for an entire people as they wandered through the wilderness trying to find their way home. And interestingly, the Mem being the womb, the Dalit is more so the birth canal. So it has this relationship to it in that after the gestation time, a transition, a doorway needs to open. That doorway, which can look like death for an infant who is in utero and has never known any other world, being pushed out through that birth canal can seem like a death, but it's actually the beginning for them of their life in the world as we know it. It corresponds to the 40 days of rain that happened around the flood of Noah. And that's what's happening right now. This is the time of the season of the year where the rains start to come. And I see it as corresponding to the High Priestess card in Tarot, the Moon Mother. This is the outcome and the advice. Let transformation happen. Find some gestation. Find the ability to transform through cleansing with water, and accepting the transformation through gestation right now at this wet season. And on the right side, we have the Nordic rune of Thurisaz, which is the doorway, the gateway, and sometimes the giant. So it's the same letter as Dalit, basically. It's also known, it's funny, Dalit has an additional sound of Thalit, so it's got that same sound to it, that TH sound. So Thurisaz is that doorway, it's that gateway. That it's a challenge that we have to get through, because it does have a giant affiliation with it, but it's the way out. It's the only way out is through. And to that end, it also corresponds to a gateway, a doorway, or death, perhaps. That the only way out, the only way to get through this challenge is to go through it. It is upright. It's not an impossible challenge. So the message on the Nordic rune side is to walk through the doorway. Even though we're having a challenge with it here on the left side, walk through that doorway, face the giant, face the difficult thing, and come out on the other side. Be born out of that period of gestation that we're in. Find the way to the doorway to birth yourself into the next thing. Because staying in the womb isn't good for anyone. It's not going to help either the mother or the infant to stay in the womb. It's about having the will to walk through that doorway. And it's about luck and protection as well. So if you can embrace it, you can get through with the protection. It corresponds to the god Thor, who has that hammer that, can break down or protect, breaking down boundaries and getting through the doorway. So for those of you who chose these mushrooms, this mycelium fruiting body here, we've got the chime that reminds us that the divine is here with us. Then we've got the 13th card, the journey. And it doesn't say death, you'll notice, because it is all transformation. And interestingly, this moon at the top with the birds on it, when you look at it quickly, it looks just like that mushroom. So interesting that we have the moon, which is the mystery. The mem, which I say corresponds to the high priestess, who is the mother of the moon. That we have the aleph saying start, something is starting, that something is transforming through breath. That we have the gebo looking interestingly like the aleph in that it's a crossroads and a gift and an exchange that you may be making, exchanging one thing for another. That our challenge on the left side is the dalit, the doorway, the death, the transition, the liminal space. And then on the right, tending our needs with nauthes. How do we tend our needs to get through this situation? And then our outcome is that gestation, the mem, the mother letter of water. Find a way through with the water. And on the right, step through that doorway with Thurisaz. Break down that door if need be to get to where you need to go on the other side. Break through the earth. Come up as a fruiting body and transform. For those of you who chose the mushrooms, this has been your reading, and I hope it's been useful to give you a hint into what is coming for your transition right now in this time of year. And we will see you here next time. Hello, those of you who chose the Western Red Cedar and Wildwood Rosehip. Let's take a look at your plants first. So the Western Red Cedar is this beautiful tree, and it has many healing properties. It's a protective herb. It's a tree, but we can make it into an herbal tincture. And it's quite healing for many ailments. And rose hips, which are, they're a rose, but they have huge amounts of vitamin C in them. They're beautiful at this time of year as well. They're very nourishing. People use them in tea as well. And they're a gorgeous combination together with the dark green, the evergreen, as I said. The cedar stays green all season long, although some parts of it you can see are turning brown. There are different branches that sometimes will brown out and, slough off. And the rosehip, which transforms from a rose to a fruiting body. And then in the spring, more roses are come, but these feed the animals and the birds as they come through in the winter time, in the autumn time. So this is your plant matter that you've chosen today, this evergreen cedar and this beautiful red-orange rosehip. I'm going to set those off to the side. And we're going to start by pulling out a card. Now, I chose different decks for each of the piles, and for yours I'm choosing the Animal Spirit Wild Unknown deck. So it's not actually a tarot deck, but it is the Animal Spirit deck. And I'm just going to shuffle for a minute and see what comes up for you with regards to what's transitioning and transforming for you this season as we move through the month of Cheshvan. And what maybe in your case is staying evergreen, what is feeding and nourishing the thing that comes next, and what is staying stable and stationary. And here's the card. Wow, so we have the eagle for you. What a beautiful card. So the eagle is, of course, I say of course, but it's an air element. You can see the air element at the top here. And the eagle is representative of power, like all-pervading power, seeking of truth, and transformation of karma. This eagle emanates the light of the sun. He's both physically and spiritually strong and represents mastery over fire and air. When the eagle appears, you will soon be thrown into karmic fire for the sake of transformation. So as we're talking, transformation is up this season. So when he's in balance, the eagle is about bright, radiant challenges. And when it's out of balance, it can be controlling. In order to bring things into balance, it's important to step into the unknown. So eagle, such a powerful bird, and so symbolic in so many cultures. They are quite amazingly powerful animals. I'm going to pull out some Hebrunes today and some Nordic runes as well. So let's stir it up. We're going to do a 3-letter reading. And let's just see what comes out today. At the top, we have the letter Tzadi. In the center, we have the letter Gimel. And at the bottom, we have the letter Zion. Wow, Zion. Okay. Okay, let's also pull out our Nordic runes before we start to look at them individually. Starting at the top, we have the letter Yira. In the center, we have the letter Ansuz. And at the bottom, Tewaz. Wow. Okay. All right. Starting at the top left, this is the position of what is up right now. And we have the letter Tzadi, which means justice. It's the letter that begins the word tzedek and tzadik. Tzadik meaning a righteous person. Also the word tzayid, which means hunting, searching. And also the word tzedakah, which means mutual aid or caring for others in a just fashion. So justice is up right now. Some say it looks like a bent nun with a yud on its back. So it's like this idea of humility with the divine, the yud, bish is the first letter of the yud he vav he, at its back. Nun represents humility. Justice is up, and it's so interesting with the power of the eagle here and the transformation that happens with the fire and the air. We have justice here. It is the number 90 in Gematria, and 90 is the number of years old that the matriarch Sarah was when Yitzhak was born. Yitzhak, who has Tzadi in his name, and it is said that that is a representation of that each child has the ability to be a righteous person, a tzaddik, within them. It's the ultimate manifestation of the number 9, 10 times 9 being 90. 9 is the letter tet, which means gestation. So Sarah was 90 years old when she gave birth to Yitzhak, which is quite elderly. And so there's this ultimate manifestation of goodness within justice here. It is the letter that corresponds to the month of Shvat, which is early in the year during the constellation Aquarius. The month of Shvat is affiliated with the tribe of Asher. Asher is the son of Zilpah, and it means happy, but it's also reminiscent of Asherah, who is the goddess who lives within the trees. And you can see Tzadi looks a little bit like a tree, like it has a earth and then the trunk and branches coming up. And at the top, the 2 yuds, which represent the divine. So this idea of being planted firmly in the ground, growing strong, and having the divine at your crown is really up for justice. And that's what's up right now. Justice, fairness, balance, ethics. It corresponds to the tarot card of justice in my book. So, righteousness and hunting for righteousness within the world, trying to find that which is just and righteous right now. Tzadi is also said to correspond to the foundation of thought in the Sefer Yetzirah, the book of creation. The foundation of thought, so being able to think your way through a thing justly and righteously, being a righteous judge. It's all very important right now. On the right side, we have the letter Yira. And Yira is the letter that is about harvest. It's about cycles and seasons, and about bringing in what you have planted. Fruition and fruitful season, having lots of plenty, and also just cycles in nature, that things come and change and transform and die and then regrow. And it can also be about peace and happiness. So this idea of transformation of something, even when the seasons change, as we are right now in the autumn season in the Northern Hemisphere, as things start to transform and die, there is the transformation and ability to know that they will grow again, that seeds are being planted, that there is peace and happiness on the horizon, that we've brought in our harvest, these fruits have been harvested, and now we have a good harvest. So maybe we're harvesting justice right now. Maybe I know that the eagles hunt salmon at this time of year as the salmon swim up the river. So not great for the salmon maybe, but very good for the eagle. So being able to see how nature plays out in terms of even when things look unjust for one species, perhaps we're looking at a balance that's taking place big picture between multiple species within the earth itself. On the left side, in the center, which is the position of what is our fear or challenge right now, we have the letter Gimel. And Gimel is the letter which represents a camel or a foot stepping forward. and is also related to justice because Gimel rules over the planet Jupiter in the sky, and the word for Jupiter in Hebrew is tzedek, justice. So it's about running toward justice, being able to step forward in a direction toward justice. And this is a challenge or a fear right now. How can we make the movement forward? How can we discern between peace and evil? It's a binary transformation of peace and evil, and I don't love those translations in English. Peace in Hebrew is shalom, so wholeness. I like to think of it as in terms of wholeness and brokenness. Wholeness and maybe injustice. How can we find our way forward into wholeness and walk away from that which is evil or wicked or broken or unjust? It's the number 3 in Gematria, so it has the elements, the mother elements of fire, air, and water within it, and balance of those 3 things. It's the first letter of the word Gan, as in Gan Eden, the Garden of Eden. And so when I think about it in terms of that peace and evil or wholeness and brokenness, it reminds me of the tree of the knowledge of what is good and evil. And that in the original myth story, we have chosen to eat of the fruit of knowing what is right and what is wrong, and what is just and what is unjust. And so the challenge here in this situation is, how do we make a good discernment? How do we choose, now that we can tell the difference between good and evil, how do we make a good decision toward, how do we move forward? How do we walk forward into the right direction? I see Gimel as corresponding to the patriarch Yaakov, Jacob, in the Torah, because he ran from one thing to another. He ran from his brother Esau after he had stolen the birthright. And he wandered, he sojourned through the region for many, many, many years. And walking forward, always looking for what was right, trying to create peace, eventually coming back to his brother and creating peace with his brother Esau. Gimel is about harmony. How do we find harmony? How do we find peace? How do we find justice? How do we rule over Jupiter with that very large idea of justice? How do we find big justice? And that's the challenge right now, especially for the power that the eagle that we have here, this very, very powerful character. On the right side, the challenge is the letter Ansuz, which means it's like the chief god. It's about communication, and it's the chief god Odin in the Nordic mythology. So the challenge here is finding our connection with the divine and communicating effectively, using our minds and our voices, listening to the divine within us to get inspiration, to know ourselves well enough to make the right choices. So not dissimilar from the Gimel here is being able to discern between what is right and what is wrong. Being able to listen to the divine within ourselves, being able to know ourselves well enough that we are being honest with ourselves when we make a choice, that we're not lying to ourselves about what it means to take certain action. Listening to the voices within ourselves, our highest self, that which is connected to the divine. Having a true and good vision is the challenge right now. And the eagle has great vision, and ideally we'll be able to find the right thing, the light that is coming from within and from the sun, from the source. Our outcome letter on the left side is interesting, the letter Zayin. Zion, which is a sword or a scepter. It's all about power. Same thing as the eagle card. It's all about power. It's about sovereignty. Using one's power for good. It's the number 7 in Gematria, so it has to do with completions. The 7th day of creation is the final day of creation. And so something is coming to an end. Something is coming to an end, and sovereignty will reign. It corresponds to the Shabbat bride, who is known as the Shekhinah, the indwelling presence of the divine. And so we need to grasp that scepter and own our sovereignty in this situation. Zion corresponds to the sense of smell in the Sefer Yetzirah, which is sometimes correlated with the month of Cheshvan as well. So something powerful, something being able to sniff it out, being able to discern, maybe just through the sense of smell, which we were told was not corrupted in the fall that happened in the garden. The sense of smell is up right now. It has to do with the spleen in the body. So there's something about spleen here. Maybe, I don't know if spleen corresponds to anger. Chutzpah is what comes to mind. It is the letter that corresponds to the 7th year, which is the year of the Shemitah, the year where we release. We let the land lie fallow. Give it back to the earth, give it back to nature for a year in order for it to rest. And because it is the number 7 and the 7th day of creation is Shabbat, it has to do with rest. So there's a time coming, ideally, where rest will be able to happen. Rest and sovereignty, completion, and a sense of magic as well. 7 is a lucky number. It's corresponding to a lot of magic, and the Zion also could be seen as a wand. It's like a magic wand, something that we use to create what we'd like to see in the world. I see Zion as corresponding to the Emperor in Tarot, so power and authority. Like the eagle. The eagle is a very powerful animal and has that sense of sovereignty that we too can grasp as we move forward, but the sense of sovereignty that comes from the indwelling presence of the Shekhinah. That's what's the future here, based on this reading for you. That feeling of evergreen, that feeling of fruitfulness that comes with the sovereignty of the Shekhinah. And on the right side, interestingly, we have the letter Tewaz. Tewaz is also all about power. It's corresponding to the god Tyr, who is the sky god, and he's a leader and warrior. He's the one who is known to have self-sacrificed. And it's about logical thought and rationality and victory. But it's about victory, and it's interesting how similar these two letters look. We have the Tewaz and the Zayin, which look very similar. They look like an arrow or a scepter or a sword of some sort. So there's this idea of, there's a little bit of a feeling of war here with the Tewaz, because he is the god of contention in the same way that Mars is, but also about protection. And as I said, self-sacrifice. He's the one who sacrificed his hand to the wolf in order that the war not take place. So there's something about balance, being a good leader, being a good warrior, somebody who holds the peace, ideally, and isn't just indiscriminately causing suffering, but uses their sword and their spear in order to bring about peace. In the same way that the eagle doesn't kill indiscriminately, but only eats what is necessary in order for it to survive, but is incredibly powerful, feeds its young, protects its family. So for those of you who chose the cedar and the rosehip, we've got justice at the very top here, justice and harmony and fertility in the form of gathering one's harvest. That our challenges have to do with moving forward with justice and listening to the communication of the divine from within, and finding that indwelling presence of the divine in order to claim and own our sovereignty. That maybe there's some self-sacrifice that's necessary in order to bring about a just and powerful sovereignty. So for those of you who chose the eagle today, shine your light, find a way to find justice in the situation. Find your personal sovereignty. And I will look forward to seeing you here next time.